Yo, what is up guys? I'm here hitting you up with a new video. Before we start talking about the stuff I figured out for today's video, I wanted to let you guys know 96% of your mad lads are not subscribed to the channel. So if you want to become a Giga Chat right now, subscribe and also turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos in the future. First of all, big shout out to my man Obscure Mouse on the SLA database Discord, who started the whole discussion today with tests as well when it comes to what actual debuffs do you get when you hit red CP. And we actually made some big discoveries today I wanted to share with you guys. So first of all, how does the CP, if you're above the recommended CP or below the recommended CP, if you're red CP or whatever, does it affect the damage you deal? Does it affect the damage you take? Or does it affect anything else? So by doing the test, I went to Battlefield of Times floor 29 with the bear. As you can see here, the recommended CP is 242k and we are at exactly or almost 242k, which is basically 100% recommended CP. And to make it more accurate, we use Choi for our testings because Choi doesn't crit at all and we have just that raw damage number up, and we use Igris and not blades so we don't get a attack bonus, so we can do the correct tests. So for this testing is we want to see first of all how much damage we deal and how much damage we take from this specific situation. So when we go in, all I'm doing is testing the first. I already done everything, so I know all the results at the end, but I just do the first hit. See, okay, 4,300 damage, and we see 5,800 HP left. Okay, I will at the end of test one, basically I put up the numbers, what it means, how the percentages and everything, right? So now, since we now know, okay, we did 4,300 damage with the first hit, we had half HP, right, at 100% recommended CP. Now we are doing the extreme opposite. We just used Choi. We are now at 100k total CP, which is, I believe, 44%. I will put up all the numbers anyways, but now let's check the difference from the first one, from 100% recommended CP to now I believe 44% or something. There we go. Now we did, I can do it one more time because I didn't get the first hit, it was actually the second hit. But as we were able to see, we immediately got one shot at this time. So by being below 50% recommended CP, we did half the damage. Obviously, we have a little bit of damage fluctuation because we are at around 70% perception stat, right? So now in this case, you saw we did 2,200 damage. So we have a damage fluctuation from 2,200 to like 3,100 roughly. And the same goes with the first test. I did the initial 4,300. It can also go all the way up to 5,000. But we just picked the lowest numbers for the comparison here. But what we were able to see from the first test is by having less than 50% recommended HP, we did half damage and received double the damage or 50% more damage. From having 50% HP left, we were one shotted immediately and our damage went from 4,300 to 2,200. We have the damage fluctuation, but that's roughly the number. Now we change the setting here. We add Seo to the mix just to increase our total power. We are now roughly at 69% recommended total power, and now we look at the difference this time. So this time around, we stayed at 3,700 HP from 11,800. I also believe that the enemies have damage fluctuations as well, because I tested the exact same setup. And the last time I was at red HP, so I was below 30% HP the last time I tested that one from just the initial blizzard. But you can see we put in Seo, but now this time we survived, but we had less than 50% HP, but we were able to survive the attack. So by doing these tests, we figured out that if you are in the red CP, your damage dealt will decrease and your damage taken will increase depending on the percentages you are below the boss. We still didn't figure out entirely at which percentages the damage taken and the damage dealt reduces or decreases. But it could be either linear, that if you are at 69% recommended CP, you deal roughly about 69% of your damage. It could be, but it could also be checks like if you're below 70%, if you're below 75%, 80%, and so on and so forth. But now there's one last thing we figured out. So as you can see here for Seo, she has 45% crit rate. Now we go into the fight. We are at 100% recommended CP, and let's see roughly how she crits in the battle, because we made a big discovery. So let's take a look. I will now count the crits roughly for the next 30 seconds, so we get a rough idea. Because she's at 45%, so in theory she should crit like what? Every 2 to 3 hits, right? You can already see the crits going in. You can tell. I think you can see this right here. We're doing a couple of attacks here. We see a couple of crits here and there. There we go. Seems about right. We crit more or less depending on the situation. But just with the basic attacks, we can already tell, okay, how often Seo crits at 45% crit rate. So now that we saw how much she's critting at the recommended CP at white CP, we know just do solo Seo and now compare the crits again. So we are doing the exact same thing. Let's dodge. Now we attack. Now let's pay attention on how often we actually crit. I saw 1 crit so far. Still 1 crit, second crit. Third crit, fourth, 5. Couple more. What you see now? We are getting, this time around, way less crits. Now we go barely to the red ranks at 202k total power, which is roughly below 85% of the recommended CP. If you're below 85%, you're in red, and if you're above 115%, you're in the blue. And we do the exact same thing again. The only thing that skews the testing right now is the Igris with the 6% additional crit. So now we do the exact same thing. We know Seo has 45% crit rate. Now check this out. She's barely in the red. 1 crit. No crits. No crits. There's another crit. 2, 3 crits. Four crits. Five, 6. You notice the difference? 7. You notice the difference from the very first one? So what we figured out is we don't know if it is a bug or if it's intentional in the red CP. Obscure Mouse figured out the bug or debuff, more or less. When you are in, by the way, all these tests are also applying to Jinwoo. If you are in the red ranks, your crit rate stat, what you gain from gears and substats, will go down to default. So whatever crit rate you have, if you're at like 40%, 50%, doesn't matter. As soon as you hit red CP, you will go down to 5% crit rate. So not only do we deal less damage when we are in a red CP, the damage we take is increased in red CP, but also, and that's the biggest flaw, and I hope Netmarble looks into it. I also don't agree to any of these debuffs, but the biggest offender is as soon as we are in the red, our default crit rate will drop down to 5%. I don't think that's acceptable. And yeah, that's about it for today's videos, guys. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Deuces.